Hi all, thanks for visiting my the last talk of this day about GraphQL and CQRS, a perfect fit. Can I see some hands with people who are already familiar with CQRS? People that have CQRS architecture running currently? Right, so it's like some of those things which sounds nice, but then it doesn't get used a lot, it seems. So that's interesting. So this is just the title again. So what I will going to be talk about. So a bit about how do you handle state if you have a database. Then a bit about CQRS and how it's used in the demo application. So the demo application will be a simple gift card app, which is something at AxonIQ we use as kind of like the default demo application. Then how can you combine CQRS with GraphQL? So we'll go to the queries, the mutations, and also subscriptions, and so how it plays nice with CQRS. Then if I have some time, I will show a quick demo and some next steps. So also if you're changing your data, how CQRS is helping you with that. So a quick something about me. I'm currently working at AxonIQ. That's now for 1.5 years. AxonIQ is a company that's kind of built around what was, or still is, framework for the GVM, which is combining CQRS, event sourcing, and DDD. I also like to tinker with Rust. I think I started some library that's using schema registry and then doing it in a Java compatible way, and that's recently hit 100K downloads, so that's pretty nice for open source thing. And it's also, because it's Rust, it's like, if it compiles, it's fine, so there's hardly any issues. So, and also like music, so going to concerts and playing bass guitar. So what about state? If you want to do it very simple, then you have just the create, read, update, delete with a single database, and then things are, of course, easy. But if there are changes, you don't really know why things change. So there are some pretty nice things nowadays with CDC, which is change data capture. And then you can monitor what's changing in your database, but then it's still not clear why things change. But it's easy to start. So what about CQRS? So then you see it's becoming more complicated. So typical in CQRS, you have the commands and queries separated, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. In this case, we will use events to combine them. So we have a command that changes the data model that triggers some events, and then those events, you can use them again to build a data model where you can do your queries. So for the commands, you can actually also use those same events to ensure consistency. But of course, it's also possible that you're executing the commands directly against some kind of database and then also write the event. But then you're running in the risk that you're changing the data model, but not sending the event or something, and then it's not consistent anymore. So you probably don't want that. Some of the advantages of CQRS, performance optimization. So you can, if you want to, you can use a specific database for your commands and another database for your queries. It's scalable and elasticity. So if you want to, you could have different kind of projections, so different kinds of models for your queries, and build them specific for certain queries, which makes it easier. And that's also offering more resilience. So there's of course also some disadvantages of CQRS, that is increased complexity. So you need a lot more stuff, and also if you change things and then query them, that's a lot harder than just simply using an ORM and just directly change things and get queries again. There's also a problem of eventual consistency, but if you're using distributed computing, you're kind of already have an eventual consistency, so I don't think that's much of a problem. And I will also show with the mutations how we can kind of handle them. And of course, it's operational overhead because you need to manage more things. So yeah, it's a question if it's worth it or not. The gift card example will be, I will be using a gift card example, which is kind of like the kind of very simple application that we also use as a demo project to see. So it's like very simple. So you can create a new card. Of course, that comes with a certain ID, so that might fill if that card already exists. Once you create a card that has a certain value, then you can redeem a card, so then the card should already exist, and then there should be enough value left. And you can also cancel cards. And of course, if you already canceled a card and then try to redeem it, then it should also fill. And of course, you can also use queries to see what cards are there and what are the values and when they are changed. So if you do mutations during CRUD, it's pretty simple because you're just changing the entity and you're done. And then mostly, of course, there's no rules for this of how to implement this in GraphQL, but most likely you return the entity because that's nice. You could, of course, also implement GraphQL in such a way that you're just returning a Boolean with it's filled or didn't fill, but that's not providing much value. And queries are also pretty simple if it's the same database and you're using CRUD, because yeah, you can just use queries like you're using to. And of course, you have all kinds of tools out there nowadays that if you already have an existing database, you can create a GraphQL layer on top, which makes it even easier. So for the demo project, I'm using Axon Server as the event store and message router. So that means that all the messages flow through the Axon Server. And then I will use, it's now still a separate component, and we're kind of allergic to calling it REST, because REST is not really clear what it is. So we're calling it, it's doing JSON over HTTP, which broadens up the scope and makes it easier to use with other languages. And then for the projection, I will use MongoDB. So that's both, there's also a JVM component that's handling the commands, and that will also use MongoDB for the projection. So there are two different kinds of projections. And then with Yoga, with Deno, I built the GraphQL layer. So this is like how it looks. I think I managed them all, but yeah. So information is flowing from the Deno app. You basically execute a command, for example, to create a gift card that is going via Axon Synapse to the application. That's the Axon framework application that will then instantiate the gift card, and then you can then get back. Because then creating the gift card will trigger an event. That event again will go through Axon Server to Synapse, back to Deno, and then you get the event and you can create a gift card. So it all seems a bit complex, and yeah. So how do you do mutations using CQRS? So you can execute the command. Like I said, you wait, and then there's already a subscription running. So when the Deno app starts, it will say to the Synapse instance with a webhook, if any of these events are being triggered, I want to get a webhook signal with the actual event. And then using that event, it will update the projection and also so. And optionally, you can set a timeout. So depending on how you want to, if you want to have the result of the command or not, you could just set timeout to 0, and then it's just only checking if the command is succeeding or not. Or you could set it higher and then get back the value that changed in the database. So this is the data flow when you're executing a command. So then from the Deno application, it will send a JSON over HTTP to Axon Synapse. That will send it to Axon Server. Axon Server then knows, hey, I have this Axon framework application that says he can handle this kind of commands. that will send back that it's okay. And then once it's okay, it's sending the event, and then Axon server also sees, hey, there's this subscription is running, and this application wants to have this event, so that there's a routed via Axon signups, ending up in Deno, and then it can update the gift card with that event. And then since we received the trigger in Deno, we can then fetch the actual gift card and return it back. So this is how in the demo application the mutation would look like. So you can already see that there are 3 different options with the union. So it can be that it's succeeded and we also fetched the thing in time. So then we will be returning a gift card. Could also be that there's a command error. So that's like the things I mentioned. Could be that you're trying to create a card but the ID is already existing, or there's not enough money left on the card. Or it could be a fetch error. So that's, in this case, it will always be a timeout. So that basically means the command did succeed, but we didn't receive the event in time. So this is the happy flow. So then you get back the cards. In this case, we only queried for the issued field. This is the case when there's no command handler. So in this case, the command did reach the Axon server, but then there wasn't a registration anymore from the GVM app. So then, well, it can handle the command. So then it sends that error back. This is another kind of error, which is a bit cryptic, but it's basically trying to create a card that's already existing. So then it's that's why it's saying it's trying to publish an event with the sequence number 0, but then there's already one it's trying to publish one with 0, but there's already one, so it should be 1. So that's why this error is coming up. And like I mentioned, you can set a timeout, so that's now configured in milliseconds. So you could also set it shorter if you want. Then queries using CQRS. So in this case, it has its own projection to do the queries. So that's pretty simple. And then returning any entities. With the advantage that we're still, all the events will always be available. So if we want to add some information later on, we can just rebuild the whole projection and still have the queries against that. So this is pretty simple. So this is an example of a query, which is probably. And then the nice thing, since we have these events as triggers, is that we also can use subscriptions. And then returning any updated entities. So so first we do the subscription. For example, we can follow a single gift card or just have any update from any gift card. And then if we get those events, we update the event and then set it back to Deno with subscription and then something back. So I have enough time for the demo, so that's nice. How to handle changes. So for example, if we now want to make this a bit more complex and add validity to cards, like it makes sense that you can't use the same gift card for years. So then we find some way in the command to add how many days are valid, but of course there's already existing gift cards. So we need some way to set like a default validity of maybe a year. And then we can, on the Deno side, recreate the projection and of course also add that field to the command. And maybe we want to have some grace period where we still accept commands that doesn't have any validity. So I can go to the demo. So actually the GVM side has its own very simple front end. I'm not the front end guy, so it's not looking very fancy. So there's some things in there to create cards in bulk, which will quickly create 3 cards. So this one is just using REST. And then it's actually in this UI, it's using Axon subscription, using server-sent events to get the values back. And if I do a large amount, then I also get the error here. Of course, the more interesting one is the yoga. And for example, here I set the mutation, which somehow timed out, because it was the first one. Now it's pretty fast, and you can also see that can zoom in a bit. So you can see that the remaining value is less than that. And well, the eventual consistency is not really that much of a problem since it's still pretty fast. So any questions or maybe some parts of the code people are interested in? I can at least show also the last slide again. Any other? Yeah. So the question is, when do you know when CQRS is like a valid use case? That's kind of hard since the complexity involved. Of course, you could imagine things that I want to change, that maybe I want to have a gift card for a specific vendor and then change it later on. And yeah, it's always things that are like, it depends is always a great answer. Because if it's just one database, you can also write a migration and then just add a vendor for everything, or just add a default validity date. But any other questions? Because otherwise we can go to the end. Okay, thank you. Oh.
I was looking at the schema that you had with the errors coming back. It followed the same union pattern, but was there a specific CQRS pattern that you were following for the composition of the results coming back?
I'm not sure I get the question.
If you look at one of the examples, I think it was command error as the possible result.
Yeah, so I'm now going to the...
Oh yeah, okay. Command result is command error and text error.
Yeah, so those different kinds of errors.
And are those for the CQRS pattern?
Not really. That's just how I currently implement it in the endpoint, as a way to make it optional for the client to determine if it wants to wait for the result or not. So then it's, I think it's, yeah, then it's nice to have some different kind of error back. So that's not CQRS specific. That's just, well, not and yes, because you need some way to handle eventual consistency. And maybe in your client application, you're only interested that the command is succeeding. And then you can just set the delay to 0, because you don't want to wait, because you're only interested if the command is succeeding or not. And then, yeah, it's a fetch error. Maybe it should be named differently, but at least you know the command did succeed. So.
Right, it's different from the other example I see here where the results are very specific to the operation experience. But if it's not CQRS, that most people don't.
Could be, I don't know. Yeah. So I guess that's it. Or, oh.
There was a presentation earlier about incremental delivery using like the defer directive. Do you think there's any use case for that here?
Yeah, I think that would be nice. So then you could get back maybe just command succeeded, and then later on the updated gift card. Yeah, that would make sense.